The following is a retelling of the end of Heavenly Haven as we know it. The information was taken from found documents and stories from family and neighbors of the members of Heavenly Haven. Parts have been embellished to move the story forward.
Before we begin our journey with Cultastic, we want to remind all our listeners. This podcast is a creative and educational exercise. The scenarios and discussions presented here are purely fictional and theoretical, exploring the concept of cults in a controlled, imaginative context. This is not a real cult, nor do we advocate or support the creation of any such groups in reality. If you or someone you love might be involved in a real cult, or if you have concerns about potentially harmful group dynamics, it's important to seek help. Remember, understanding and awareness are key in recognizing and preventing the dangers of real cults. Stay informed, stay safe, and enjoy Cultastic as a thought-provoking exploration, not a guide to action.
Chapter 7: The cracks begin to show. Tensions within the community began to resurface. While many loyalists remained committed to Mary's vision, others grew weary of the strict military-style regimen. Questions began to circulate about the sustainability of their approach, especially as the challenges of their new life mounted. One evening during a community meeting, a young woman named Mia spoke up. "Mary, we've been working tirelessly, but it feels like we're losing sight of our original purpose. We came here to create a harmonious community, not just a military outpost." Mary's expression hardened. "We are creating a safe haven for ourselves. Harmony comes from strength, and strength comes from discipline. If you cannot understand that, then you may not belong here." Mia's heart sank at the harshness of Mary's response, but she knew that she wasn't alone in her concerns. Several others nodded in agreement, their expressions revealing a shared sense of discontent. As the meeting continued, a palpable rift formed between those who supported Mary's authoritarian leadership and those who longed for the communal spirit they had once embraced. The seeds of dissent had taken root once more, threatening to unravel the fragile unity they had fought so hard to maintain. Chapter 8: The Outbreak of Conflict. The growing divide within the community reached a boiling point when supplies began to dwindle. The initial excitement of their new settlement had given way to the harsh realities of survival. Tensions flared as people began to argue over rationing and the distribution of dwindling resources. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, a heated confrontation erupted between Mary's loyalists and a group of dissenters who had grown increasingly frustrated with the situation. Voices rose, and accusations were thrown around, creating an atmosphere of hostility that echoed through the settlement. "Mary doesn't care about us," shouted one of the dissenters, a man named Tom. "All she wants is control. We can't live like this." Mary's loyalists stood firm, armed and prepared to defend her leadership. Sergeant Laura Finch stepped forward, her stance imposing. "You will respect our leader and follow her orders. This is about our survival." The confrontation escalated into chaos as dissenters pushed back against the loyalists, their frustrations boiling over. Fists flew, and the tension that had been brewing for weeks finally erupted into physical violence. In the midst of the chaos, Mary Rocker stepped forward, her voice cutting through the noise like a knife. "Enough," she commanded, her presence instantly demanding attention. "This is not how we handle our differences. We are a community, and we will act like one." But her words fell on deaf ears as the fight continued to rage. The loyalists and dissenters clashed, and the settlement descended into chaos. The dream of a harmonious community was quickly unraveling, leaving behind a landscape of anger and division. Chapter 9: The Aftermath of Violence. As the dust settled from the violent confrontation, the settlement was left in disarray. Members were bruised, both physically and emotionally, and the air was thick with resentment. Mary Rocker's grip on power felt more tenuous than ever, and the once unified community now appeared fractured and broken. Mary called for an emergency meeting to address the fallout from the violence. She understood that her authority was being challenged, and she needed to regain control before the situation spiraled further out of hand. The meeting was tense, with dissenters and loyalists facing off across the gathering. Mary's loyalists stood at the ready, arms crossed and eyes narrowed, while the dissenters looked weary but defiant. "Today was a disgrace," Mary began, her voice steady but laced with anger. "We cannot allow our internal divisions to tear us apart. If we are to survive in this new world, we must stand united. This was not just a fight, it was a betrayal of everything we've worked for." Helen, one of the leading dissenters, spoke up, her voice calm yet unwavering. "Mary, we're not trying to betray anyone. We want a community built on trust and mutual respect, not fear and control. This isn't what we signed up for." Mary's expression hardened. "If you cannot abide by the rules and embrace the strength we need, then you will be dealt with. There will be no more dissent. We cannot afford to show weakness." The atmosphere grew tense as Mary's loyalists shifted uneasily. They exchanged glances, and some began to question whether they could continue to support her authoritarian rule. As the meeting adjourned, the fractures within the community became more pronounced. Members began to form factions, some rallying behind Mary and her vision of control, while others longed for a return to the ideals of unity and peace that had originally drawn them to heavenly heaven. Chapter 10: The Final Decision. In the days that followed the confrontation, the community remained on edge. Rumors circulated about potential breakaways, and the tension between loyalists and dissenters continued to simmer. Mary Rocker knew that she had to make a choice: either double down on her approach or find a way to address the growing unrest. After a night of restless contemplation, she summoned her trusted advisors, including Sergeant Laura Finch, to discuss her options. "We cannot continue like this," Mary stated firmly. "We need to make a definitive choice about how to handle this divide." Laura nodded in agreement. "We need to show strength. If we give in to dissent now, it will only embolden them. We must make an example out of those who oppose us." Mary leaned back, considering her options. "I agree, but we also need to maintain some semblance of order. Perhaps we can offer those who wish to leave the opportunity to do so, but under strict terms." Laura raised an eyebrow. "And what terms would those be?" "Anyone who chooses to leave must do so without any of our resources or weapons," Mary replied, her voice resolute. "They will take only what they came with, and they must sign an agreement stating they will not return." Laura smiled, the corners of her lips curling up in approval. "That will send a strong message." As Mary and Laura finalized their plan, the atmosphere in the commune shifted once more. The loyalists began to solidify their ranks, ready to confront the dissenters and put an end to the unrest once and for all. Chapter 11: The Confrontation. The following evening, Mary Rocker called for another meeting, this time to present her ultimatum. Members gathered in the central courtyard, their expressions a mix of anxiety and anticipation. The fire pit crackled, casting flickering shadows across their faces. Mary stood at the front, flanked by Sergeant Finch and several armed loyalists. "Tonight, we face a choice," she declared, her voice echoing through the gathering. "We can either stand united as one community, or we can allow dissent to tear us apart. I will not tolerate any further challenges to my leadership." The crowd shifted uneasily as Mary continued. "I am offering a chance for those who wish to leave without our resources, without our weapons, and with the understanding that you will not return. If you choose to stay, you must adhere to our rules and work together for the greater good." A murmur rippled through the crowd as dissenters exchanged glances, weighing their options. Helen stepped forward, her voice steady. "Mary, we didn't come here to fight. We came here for a community, for connection. This isn't the way." Mary's eyes narrowed. "You had your chance, Helen. This is not a negotiation. If you believe in your vision, then leave, but know that you will not return." Helen's heart sank as she realized the severity of the situation. We shouldn't be forced to choose between loyalty and our principles. We deserve a community based on trust, not fear. Mary's expression hardened. "Then perhaps you are not suited for this new world. I will not allow weakness to endanger our survival. The choice is yours." The air grew thick with tension as the loyalists stood ready, watching the dissenters with a mixture of suspicion and determination. Mary's ultimatum had put them all on edge, and the divide between them had never been clearer. Chapter 12: The Exodus. As the night wore on, a small group of dissenters stepped forward, led by Helen. "We will leave," she declared, her voice unwavering. "But we will not do so in fear. We will leave with our heads held high, knowing we stand for what we believe in." Mary regarded them with a mixture of disdain and respect. "Very well, but you will not take anything with you. You will leave as you came." The dissenters nodded, determined to stand by their convictions, even as they prepared to leave behind the community they had fought for. As they gathered their belongings, the atmosphere was heavy with emotion. They said their goodbyes to those who chose to remain, hearts aching for what could have been. As dawn broke, the dissenters walked away from the commune, leaving behind the memories of their time in heavenly heaven. Mary watched them go, her expression cold and unreadable. The loyalists stood by her side, a sense of triumph in their demeanor. Yet, as the loyalists celebrated their victory, a nagging feeling of unease settled over Mary. The departure of the dissenters left a void in the community, and despite her efforts to maintain control, the future felt uncertain. Chapter 13: A New Beginning. With the dissenters gone, Mary Rocker turned her attention to solidifying her authority within the commune. The loyalists rallied around her, emboldened by the decision to expel those who opposed her leadership. Mary called for a meeting to discuss the next steps for their new community. "We have a fresh start before us," she proclaimed. "We will rebuild what we have lost and create a sanctuary that aligns with our vision. We are now free from the distractions and doubts that plagued us." Sergeant Finch stood beside her, her presence reinforcing the sense of security among the loyalists. "We need to focus on strengthening our defenses," Laura added. "We can't afford to let any outside influence disrupt our progress again." As the meeting concluded, the loyalists set to work, reinforcing their security measures and establishing a sense of order within the commune. They patrolled the perimeter, ensuring that no one entered their new territory uninvited. But as the days turned into weeks, the sense of unease that lingered in the air persisted. The departure of the dissenters had left a scar on the community, and Mary Rocker's grip on power felt increasingly tenuous. While she had successfully eliminated the immediate threat, the ramifications of her actions weighed heavily on her conscience. Chapter 14: The Threat from Within. Despite the newfound order, whispers of dissent still lingered among some loyalists. While many were committed to Mary's vision, others began to question whether her methods were truly the best way to ensure their survival. The tight grip of fear had begun to stifle the spirit of community that had originally drawn them to Heavenly Haven. One evening, during a routine patrol, Laura Finch overheard a conversation among a few of the loyalists. They were voicing their concerns about Mary's leadership and the growing militarization of their lives. "We didn't come here to become soldiers," one of them, a young man named Jake, said quietly. "I thought we were building a community, not a fortress." Laura's heart raced at the implications of their words. She recognized the potential threat these dissenting thoughts posed to Mary's authority. If left unchecked, they could lead to another wave of resistance that could tear the community apart once more. After the patrol, Laura confronted Jake and the others in a secluded area. "You need to be careful about what you say," she warned, her voice low and firm. "We're all in this together, and any sign of weakness will be dealt with harshly." Jake met her gaze, unyielding. "We're not weak. We just want to remember why we came here in the first place. We want to be a community, not a military camp." Laura's expression hardened. "If you cannot support our leader, then perhaps you should reconsider your place in this community." The confrontation left Jake shaken, but he refused to back down. As he walked away, he felt the weight of his convictions pressing down on him. He knew he wasn't alone in his feelings, and he resolved to find others who shared his concerns. Chapter 15: The Seeds of Rebellion. As the Loyalists continued their routines, the undercurrent of dissent began to grow. Jake reached out to a small group of like-minded individuals, gathering them to discuss their thoughts and feelings about the current state of affairs in Heavenly Haven. "We need to stand together," Jake urged, his voice steady as they gathered in a secluded area of the settlement. "Mary's methods may keep us safe for now, but they're eroding the very community we wanted to build." One of the women in the group, a kind-hearted soul named Mia, nodded in agreement. "I miss the sense of connection we had before. We need to find a way to communicate our concerns to Mary without fear of retribution." The group spent hours discussing their shared vision for a return to the commune's original ideals. They spoke of trust, love, and unity, qualities that had been overshadowed by Mary's militaristic approach. As the night wore on, they realized that they needed to take action if they were to preserve the spirit of Heavenly Haven. "Maybe we can organize a meeting with Mary," Jake suggested. "We can present our ideas and remind her of why we came together in the first place." The idea of confronting Mary was daunting, but the group felt a sense of resolve. They agreed to approach her together, hoping to rekindle the sense of community that had brought them all to Heavenly Haven in the beginning. Chapter 16. The Confrontation with Mary. With their resolve firm, the group of dissenters approached Mary Rocker the following day. They had arranged a meeting in her command tent, knowing that this would be their chance to voice their concerns and attempt to steer the community back toward its original ideals. As they entered the tent, Mary looked up from her maps and notes, her expression curious yet guarded. "What brings you here?" she asked, her tone neutral but with an underlying sense of authority. Jake stepped forward, taking a deep breath to steady himself. "Mary, we wanted to talk about the direction the commune is taking. We're concerned that the militarization of our community is compromising our original values." Mary's brow furrowed slightly, her expression shifting from curiosity to annoyance. "You think I don't know what I'm doing? The world outside is dangerous, and we must be prepared to defend ourselves. This is about survival." Mia chimed in, her voice trembling slightly. "We understand that, but we feel like we're losing sight of what Heavenly Haven was meant to be. We came here for community, for connection, not to live in fear." Mary's eyes narrowed as she regarded the group before her. "Fear is what keeps us safe. You may think you want to return to some idyllic past, but that world is gone. We have to adapt or perish." "Adaptation doesn't have to mean fear and control," Jake countered, his voice gaining strength. "We can be prepared without losing our humanity. We can still work together, support one another, and live in peace." Mary's expression hardened as she listened to the dissenters. "You're mistaken if you think you can change my vision for this community. I am the leader, and my decisions are for the greater good. If you cannot support that, then perhaps you should consider your place here." The atmosphere grew tense as the dissenters exchanged nervous glances. They had come hoping for a dialogue, but Mary's refusal to listen only deepened their concerns. Chapter 17. The Fallout. As the meeting concluded, the dissenters left the tent with a sense of defeat. They had hoped to ignite a spark of understanding, but instead they had encountered Mary's unyielding resolve. In the days that followed, the mood within the commune shifted once more. The loyalists who had once been filled with fervor now began to waver in their support. Rumors of dissatisfaction circulated, creating an atmosphere of uncertainty and fear. Mary Rocker was aware of the discontent brewing among her loyalists. Her previous confidence began to wane as she noticed cracks forming in her carefully constructed regime. She increased her patrols and tightened her grip, believing that more force was the answer to restoring order. But with each passing day, the dissenters grew bolder. They began to meet in secret, sharing their frustrations and plotting a way to reclaim their community. The discussions turned from simple grievances to plans for action, fueled by the belief that they could not let Mary's authoritarian rule define their lives. Chapter 18. The Tipping Point. The tension reached a tipping point when a small group of dissenters decided to stage a protest. They planned to gather in the central courtyard and openly voice their grievances, hoping to rally the remaining members who still felt trapped under Mary's rule. As the day of the protest arrived, the dissenters gathered early in the morning, preparing for what they hoped would be a turning point in the struggle for their community's soul. They carried banners and signs that proclaimed their desire for a return to peace, love, and unity. As they assembled in the courtyard, Mary's loyalists quickly took notice. Armed and ready, they surrounded the dissenters, their expressions a mix of determination and aggression. Mary approached the gathering, her demeanor imposing. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice echoing across the courtyard. "We want to speak," Helen shouted, stepping forward. "We want to remind everyone of what we stand for and what we came here to create. This isn't what we wanted." Mary's gaze darkened, and she took a step closer, her body language radiating authority. "You will not undermine my leadership. You are outnumbered and outmatched. This is your last chance to back down." The tension in the air crackled as the loyalists shifted, ready to act if necessary. The dissenters stood firm, their resolve steeling against the oppressive atmosphere. We will not back down, Jake declared, his voice unwavering. We refuse to live in fear and under tyranny. This is our home, and we will fight for it. The confrontation escalated quickly, and chaos erupted in the courtyard. Dissenters and loyalists clashed, fists flying and tensions boiling over. The once peaceful commune was engulfed in violence as the ideals of unity and community crumbled under the weight of conflict. To be continued.
Curious about where this journey will take us? Subscribe to Cultastic, or How to Start a Cult, without really trying on your favorite podcast platform, or at roguemedianetwork.com. Let's build this mission to save the people of Earth, week by unpredictable week.
This has been a Rogue Media Network production. Visit roguemedianetwork.com to find your new favorite podcast.